Will you join me in the responsive reading printed in your bulletin this morning? To laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To reach out for another is to risk exposing our true self. To love is to risk not being loved in return. This morning we have a wonderful two-voice welcome from the founder and assistant director of Open Doors, a truly wonderful and unique work in our community, reaching out to young people and their passion for education. So please do welcome Rebecca Kirk, who will introduce her colleague.
I'm so happy to be here for a couple of reasons. For one thing, I get to sing with the Grand Rapids Women's Chorus in a little while, and that's always a joy, and we thank you very much for allowing us to use your space weekly to do our practicing. And I'm also here to update you on Open Doors for Teens. It's a nonprofit organization which you, Fountain Street members, have generously supported through your Social Action Committee work. Open Doors, well, wait, I want to say, following today's thought-provoking responsive reading, I would add to learn is often to risk failing. We believe at Open Doors that learning is natural and joyful. Open Doors provides an educational opportunity for self-directed teens to learn according to their interests in a non-traditional setting. Recently, we've experienced an amazing opportunity to greatly enhance our program, support our mission, and make our services readily available to all who desire to participate. Our Assistant Director, Jacob Sabrin, would like to tell you all about it.
Thank you, Rebecca. So, as Rebecca said, we are an option for teens to learn in a non-traditional setting. In October, we teamed up with the Geek Group, which is an international science and technology center. Now, when we did that, we joined an organization that shares our mission and makes educational resources available to people of all ages. Since our program is constructed around teens' interests, it's useful having so much interesting stuff just going on around us all the time. For example, some of our teens have learned animation techniques from the Geek Group AV staff who produce educational videos on a regular basis. Our teens have experimented with 3D printing, screen printing, watercolor painting as well, due to our recent collaboration with the Grand Valley Artists organization. They've agreed to host a series of workshops with us, so that's nice as well. Our teens are now coming up with more ambitious projects than ever. Building a skateboard, a chandelier, repairing a dirt bike engine, planning a rock climbing, backpacking adventure, designing an anti-bullying campaign for elementary schools. The list goes on. As a result of our move, we were able to lower our fees to 1/6 of what they were, which means that a lot of kids who were unable to get our services before, and services like we offer, they can now get them, which is a wonderful thing, I think. Finally, we are largely a volunteer-run organization. If you'd like to join in the fun with us every week, we'd be happy to talk further after the service. So we thank you for your support. Our teens thank you. And we also thank you, Rebecca and I do, for being able to share what we do every day with families in our community. We're thankful to be able to share that with you today, so thank you.
I am not yours. shana shilu fakeifa sigaru keifa shana shilu keifa sigaru salaman. Salaman liainaiki ya mountain.
Shukran jazilan. Wassalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, and peace be upon you. In honor of the season, Lent, and to always recall that the scriptures of ancient times still roll over us with their ideas and images, and that we are always better to be in partnership with our ancestors. This passage from the Gospel attributed to Luke, a short portion. It's actually much longer, but I think you know most of the story. I want to get just the tail end. Then the son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son." Yes, this is the story of the prodigal son who ran away to have a good time, to make his own way, and discovered himself after some time penniless, homeless, and alone. But the father said to his slaves as he returned, "Quick, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And they began to celebrate. The story is not over. Now the elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. And the servant replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has him safe and sound." Then the elder son became angry and refused to go in. The father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father and said, "Listen, for all these years I've been working like a slave for you, and I've never disobeyed your command, yet you have never even given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him." And the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." Changing subjects. On this day, March 6, 1820, the Missouri Compromise became law in the United States, which allowed Missouri to enter the Union as a slave state and Maine to enter as a free state, and forever established the Mason-Dixon line as a north-south boundary between the slave and free states in the United States. On the very same date, March 6th, in 1857, 37 years later, 2 days after the inauguration of President Buchanan, the Supreme Court of the United States decided a case that began in the city of St. Louis, in a slave state. It is called the Dred Scott decision, that held that no black Americans are ever to be considered citizens, slave or free, in the entire of the United States, and that the Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional, and therefore a state of any kind and anywhere may determine whether to be slave or free. 4 years later, on March 6, 1861, 2 days after the inauguration of Abraham Lincoln, the new Confederate States of America called up 100,000 soldiers. And I tell you this because black lives do matter and should matter, and we should know. Well, I'm talking about a song you didn't hear today, but you'll go home and look it up on YouTube and have a great time with it. It's a song many of us know if we're over 40, especially if you're over 50, certainly if you're over 60. And it all hinges on one cool chord. Musicians call it a hook, the thing that makes you think of the song. They say, ooh, it gives you that little zip of excitement. All good songs have a hook, you know. You know which one it is, too, because, well, let me describe it. It's actually a dominant seventh chord based on a subdominant root. I was a music major, after all. I'm allowed to say that. And you only ever hear it in the backup singers in their echo of the text. The singer is singing, "Who do?" and the back singers say, "Who?" And the singer repeats, "Who do you think you're fooling?" But it's that who, it's that chord right there with the flatted third of the major triad, which is actually the seventh of the subdominant dominant seventh. That note, that E flat right there. Actually, it's probably a different actual note. That note is the coolest note in the whole song. And now you know exactly what song I'm talking about, don't you? I'm talking about a song Paul Simon recorded in 1973 called "Love Me Like a Rock." The lyrics tell of a man who faced temptation first as a youth and then as a man, and did not give in to temptation. That would be the devil, because his mama loved me like a rock. Mother love. If there is a stereotype of love that is as durable as romantic love, mother love is it. And they're both wrong. Lent is really not a big deal among people like religious liberals or Baptists, our history, but the idea of being intentional about spiritual matters is very much a part of that tradition. In fact, the whole Protestant Reformation was about getting people to think about their faith, not just phone it in. So we do it now, maybe not because it's our tradition, but because being intentional about something is right. And so I focus on one thing during the season of Lent to try to get inside that preposterous and yet compelling story that ends on Easter Sunday. In one of the Gospels, the Gospel of John, during the Last Supper, Jesus says, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." We should be asking what this means. We should dig down and say, what is love really? We think we know, but my entire Lenten series is to say, you don't. I'm using popular songs to illustrate the partial and imperfect and inadequate notions of love. For example, I started out with the Beatles song, "All You Need Is Love," and I said, no, you need more. You actually do need more. Even Jesus, who said, "We shall not live by bread alone," still ate bread from time to time. Last week that I was here, Johnny Cash had a wonderful song I quoted, "Love is a burning ring of fire." Oh, I wish I had that voice. Talk about the flame of desire. Boy, we think of that as love, don't we? But that's not love either. And now Paul Simon's song talks about mother love, which is almost the exact opposite of desire. Instead of wanting something, you're giving something. But that too, though it is closer, is still not all there is to love. To explain why, I've got to pick up the thread I left from last week. If you were not here last week, don't worry. But if you were not here last week, shame on you. And if you're not here next week, I am taking names. Desire, as I said last week, and remind you now, is a desire to possess something, romantic or otherwise, something that feels like it could fill an emptiness in us. In romantic love, this person will complete me, make me whole, fill what is empty. Even the Bible talks about two people becoming one flesh. You know, that's a very common notion. If you're not a Christian or a biblical person, Plato's Symposium, which is all about love, includes one character who speaks of love as being the result of two people actually being torn apart in ancient times and finding their other half. Haven't we all heard about people who said, "This person completes me. We're really one person." And no less a figure than Augustine of Hippo, St. Augustine, in his wonderful and vexing book, The Confessions, wrote so beautifully, "Thou hast made us for thyself, O God, and our hearts are restless until it finds rest in thee." Is not desire a restless heart, made so by a yawning emptiness we feel but cannot quite define? That's when I ended last week. I ended my message with the enigmatic thought that perhaps the empty places we all feel in our hearts are not absences, but presences. And I know that sounds odd, but I want you to consider for a moment, you have a pitcher in your home. I meant to bring one in the pulpit, but I ended up talking to people and forgot. Remember a pitcher, you know? You can hold it in your hand as a handle, and you pour things out with it. It's an object that exists to contain an empty space. Am I right? If it didn't have something into which you could pour, it would not be a pitcher. It would not be itself if it did not have a hollow space inside of it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the empty place we all feel is not a flaw, is not a theft, is not a sin, but actually part of who we are supposed to be. That empty part is as real and as present as every other part. Well, I'm being really abstract, so let's go to a story that might help a little bit. I think I may have told this one before, but there are always people who are new, so it sounds fresh to you. In seminary, one of my classmates, scant weeks before graduation, was giving birth. And so after she gave birth, we went to see her in the tiny apartment next to the seminary. It was less than a day later, and if you've ever seen a woman who's 24 hours after giving birth, she's not, shall we say, at her most peppy. It's a lot of freaking work, isn't it? Yeah. But she was tired and a bit dazed, and I remember that part from when we had children. And she shared with us, as she was nursing her new baby, that suddenly she understood how someone could say they would give their life for someone else. Any mothers in the room know that feeling? Yeah, you do. The Gospel of John, which I quoted just a moment ago, goes on to say about the commandment to love one another, no one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend. The irony is that Jesus had to tell the disciples, and they didn't get it, but he could have spoken to a room full of mothers, and they would have understood instantaneously. Let's call this devotion. That willingness to give your life for another life. A giving rather than a getting. And it feels like it's more like love instantaneously. But we also see it in another form in the prodigal son parable. In this case, not a losing of life, but a welcoming back. The father, who had every right to reject the first son as having run away, wasted his life, rejected him, takes the young son back without a recriminating word, without any punishment, without any desire for an explanation. How many of us would be willing to take in the wastrel who showed up at our door? And notice how it is the brother, not the father, who sees the unfairness of this. Hey, Dad, I've been a good son. I don't get any gifts. That's the sibling thing going. But the parent, having felt the emptiness, is glad to have it filled again. In Paul Simon's great song, it is the devotion of the mother that saves the man from the temptations of the devil. When I was a little boy, and the devil would call my name, and he remembers his mother's love. My mama loves me. She loves me. She gets down on her knees and hugs me. She loves me like a rock. She rocks me like the rock of ages. And every one of you in this room almost can suddenly remember what it was like to have your mother hug you, don't you? I think it's worth noting parenthetically, before I go any further, that the story of the song says, when I was a little boy and the devil would call my name, when I was a man and the devil would call my name. There's a third verse. If I was the president and the Congress would call my name. I could go on, but let those with eyes see and those with ears hear. Back to my sermon now. Did you hear that mother love is like, quote, the rock of ages? A metaphor for God, obviously. Several times in the ancient scriptures, Hebrew and Christian, God is actually described as a mother. Let me give you a few examples. We think of God as Father. That's not always true, and it's not always good. In the book of Deuteronomy, the scripture says, like the eagle that stirs up its nest and hovers over its young, God spreads to catch you and carries you. Elsewhere in the same book, you were unmindful of the rock that bore you. You forgot the God who gave you birth. Isaiah, that wonderful prophet, says, as a mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you. You shall be comforted in Jerusalem. Elsewhere he says, can a woman forget her nursing child or show no compassion for the child of her womb? Even these may forget, yet I, meaning God, will not forget you. In Matthew, Jesus says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings. Those are just a few. These are the ones we never hear. We hear about God with a mighty arm and all that, but we forget that God is also a sheltering mother. And I said, this sounds more like love. And it is closer, but it's not quite. Because you see, love, yes, is about giving, not getting. But you know, there are some people who use their gifts for selfish ends. You know the famous light bulb joke? It plays on a stereotype. It could apply to a variety, but is often talked about as being, quote, a Jewish mother. How many Jewish mothers does it take to change a light bulb? None. I'll just sit in the dark. You have a nice time. That is selfish devotion. I'm so devoted to you that you need to feel guilty about my devotion. You understand what I mean? We all have a relative like that, Jewish or not. We've all been manipulated by someone else's willingness to do for us so that we feel bad about it. Using devotion to exact something in return is not love. It can't be. That, for example, that is one key reason why I am not a formal, official Christian. Because the standard doctrine makes God into a Jewish mother, quote unquote. I'll give you eternal life, but only if you thank me for the rest of your life. Right? That's what it is. It's selfish devotion. It's manipulative, and it is not love, and it is also not God. Which brings me back to that enigmatic notion that the absence in us is actually a presence. Like the pitcher, it is something we have, not something we lack. Turning to women's imagery, having cited it now, and focusing now on this avenue of exploration. When you think about it, a uterus or a womb is a pitcher, isn't it? A vessel for containing. Designed to hold something, not forever, but for a while it is in need of care. Now, I do not wish to expostulate as a woman. I'm not, but I'm half female. My X chromosome gives me at least that much credit. All of you guys, too. Time to own your inner woman. Remember the song? She gets down on her knees and hugs me. Most of us, as I said, have that exact memory. For example, I took a nasty fall when I was 8 years old, got all cut up and bruised, and my mother wasn't at home. Someone cared for me, but I remember the pain of her absence more than the cuts and the bruises. The painful memory of not being held is stronger sometimes than the actual pain a body feels. I also remember with equal clarity being held in my father's arms as he carried me upstairs to bed. And now I'm a parent myself. Hi, son. He's hanging up on the balcony. And that memory of my youth is enriched with moments when I carried my sons in my arms, consoling them or carrying them to bed. I can still remember with absolute clarity their smooth arms around my neck and their heads against my chest. If I'm tearing up, it's because this is where we need to be to begin to understand love. We long to be held and to hold. Yes, we want to be individuals and make our own lives and go out there and do great things, but we also need to be connected and comforted and cared about. Can you see me, Mom? Can you see me? Do you understand what I'm saying? The empty space inside us is meant to hold someone. Not for our sake, not to make us feel better, not to meet our personal needs, but because we are not whole unless we are holding and being held. The emptiness reminds us of our aloneness and that we are not completely human unless we are connected, held, and holding. Love starts right there. It's like a letter in the word. More to it than the letter L, but without the letter L, it is not love. We all want to be held and to hold. And without that, without knowing that, without owning that, without claiming that, no other parts of love are possible. You, all of you, were meant to hold and to be held. Go forth and do likewise. And maybe love will have a chance.
I hope that you found the imagery of the container and its space moving and inspiring this morning. It is an echo of something we've been doing all Lent, which is in your bulletin this morning. You will find this week's Lenten poem. You have poured each week your singular word onto a small pink piece of paper. If you didn't get one this morning, there are many available out in our narthex, and we hope that you'll leave a single word in the baskets on the pillars in our narthex. They'll be gathered up into the container called a group of poets that have been gathering each week during Lent to create these extraordinary bits of art made by your soul, poured forth through a word. May it be so that the container of your life brings forth a word this week, and that you would pour it out like a child who pours themselves out onto its mother or to its father and says, "Just hold me a while." Go in peace.